Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. Episode 3. To spin a new end. The first scream came from inside the church. Not outside. Not from the tailors. From within. The sound echoed through ashmere like fabric tearing down the middle, followed by the deep, groaning toll of the village bell. Its iron voice rolled across the square, and every locked door shook on its hinges. The tailors did not move. Hundreds of black-coated figures stood in perfect silence along the road, their enormous silver shears resting at their sides. Waiting, not hunting, witnessing. The old woman tightened her grip around the spindle. They're here for judgment. The priest's face turned as white as old parchment. No, he whispered. They're here because the lie has reached its end. The church doors burst open. A man stumbled into the rain. He was broad-shouldered, dressed in the fine coat of Ashmere's magistrate, his silver hair neatly combed despite the storm. The villagers recognized him immediately. Master Aldrin. He came. He'll protect us. The man looked around wildly before his eyes landed on the stitched girl. Every color drained from his face. You. His voice cracked. You were buried. The girl stared back, and another memory tore free. A warm summer afternoon. Master Aldrin laughing as he handed children sweet buns during the harvest festival. His hand resting kindly on her shoulder. You're like family. Another memory. Autumn. A closed meeting inside the church. Raised voices. Her own. You can't keep doing this. Aldrin, you don't understand what we're protecting. Then, moonlight. Running. His footsteps behind her. A knife catching silver light. The raven-shaped ring. The blade. Pain. Darkness. She gasped. It was you. The words echoed through the square. You killed me. Aldrin stumbled backward. No. The denial lacked conviction. It wasn't supposed to happen. The priest lowered his head. I begged you to confess. Aldrin laughed bitterly. And destroy the village? Rain intensified. The tailors remained still. The oldest among them stepped forward, his face hidden beneath a hood woven from black thread. When he spoke, his voice sounded like scissors sliding through silk. Speak the truth. Aldrin looked toward the villagers. They'll hate me. No, the tailor answered calmly. They'll remember you. Silence stretched. Finally, the magistrate collapsed to his knees. I killed her. The words came quietly, almost gently. She discovered what lay beneath the church. His shoulders trembled. I thought I was saving everyone. The girl frowned. Beneath the church? The priest slowly walked toward the ancient stone building. There are catacombs. He looked at the old woman. You know what sleeps there? She nodded once. I feared as much. Torches were lit. The villagers followed in fearful silence. No one tried to stop them anymore. The tailors simply opened a path. As though this journey belonged to the living. Not them. The church smelled of damp stone and old incense. Behind the altar, the priest pressed a hidden carving shaped like a spindle. The floor shifted. Ancient steps descended into darkness. Cold air drifted upward, along with whispers. Hundreds of whispers. The catacombs stretched far beneath Ashmere. Rows of empty burial alcoves lined the walls. Not one held bones. Instead, each contained a spool of thread. Thousands of them, every color imaginable, every one softly glowing. The old woman's breathing became uneven. No, she whispered. They've been harvesting. The girl looked around. Harvesting what? The old woman picked up one spool. It pulsed gently in her hands. Grief. The priest closed his eyes. When people lose someone, he spoke with visible shame. Their sorrow leaves tiny tears in the soul. The old woman nodded. Normally those tears heal. Aldrin answered instead. We couldn't let them. They entered a vast circular chamber. At its center stood another spindle. Far larger than the old woman's. Its wooden frame stretched toward the cavern ceiling like the trunk of a petrified tree. Thousands of glowing threads fed into it. And around its base, dozens of transparent figures sat quietly. Ghosts. Not wandering. Waiting. Their bodies unraveled thread by thread into the giant spindle. The stitched girl's breath caught. There. Making. The old woman finished the sentence. Soul thread. Aldrin covered his face. Our village was dying. His voice echoed through the chamber. Famine, plague, war. Every generation brought another disaster. He looked toward the giant spindle. Then we found this. The priest continued. It could weave fortune. The girl frowned. With souls? No. The priest's eyes filled with tears. With mourning, the old woman slowly approached the great spindle. It feeds on unresolved grief. She touched its ancient wood. It grants prosperity by refusing to let the dead rest. The ghosts looked toward her. None appeared angry, only tired. Very, very tired. Another memory surfaced. This one complete. The girl remembered standing in this very chamber, hidden behind stone pillars, watching Aldrin and the village elders feeding glowing thread into the spindle. She remembered shouting, "You can't keep them here." Aldrin had turned toward her. Panicked. "You weren't supposed to see." She ran. He followed. The knife had not been planned, only feared, only chosen when every other lie failed. The memory ended. She looked at Aldrin. "You didn't mean to kill me." He shook violently. "I didn't." A pause. "But I did." The oldest tailor stepped beside the giant spindle. For the first time, he lowered his hood. Beneath it, there was no face, only countless silver threads woven together into the shape of one. "We mend endings." His voice echoed through the cavern. "Not lives." The old woman smiled sadly. "I know. You have broken the law." "I have. You stitched back what wished to rest." The old woman looked at the girl. "I stitched back what wasn't finished." The tailor considered her answer. Then, he nodded. A rare difference. The great spindle suddenly began spinning faster. Much faster. The threads feeding into it tightened. The waiting ghosts cried out. One by one, they began unraveling completely. The chamber shook. Aldrin looked horrified. "It's breaking." The old woman stared at the ancient machine. "No, it is starving." She looked toward the stitched girl. "It wants you." Every stitch beneath the girl's skin burned. Silver thread emerged through her sleeves, around her neck, across her fingertips. The giant spindle pulled. Her soul answered. She fell to one knee. "It hurts." The old woman caught her before she collapsed. "There are only two choices." The girl already knew. She looked at the small spindle in the old woman's hands, then at the enormous one consuming the waiting dead. "I understand." The old woman gently placed the small spindle into her hands. It felt warm, alive, as though countless hands had held it before her. "I have carried this for 400 years. She smiled. "Far too long." The girl whispered, "What happens if I destroy myself?" The old woman answered honestly. "The stitches unravel. You finally die. And the spindle? It dies with you." She looked toward the waiting ghosts. "They all move on." The girl turned toward the spirits. Dozens smiled sadly. None begged to stay. None feared death. They feared only waiting forever. Then, a little ghost stepped forward. A young boy, no older than 7. He looked strangely familiar. "My sister," he whispered. The stitched girl frowned. "I don't." The boy smiled. "You stitched my doll." A memory returned. A tiny cottage. A crying child. Her mending his favorite toy. She laughed softly. "I did." The boy nodded. "You always fixed broken things." He looked toward the spindle. "You don't have to stop." The words lingered. She looked down at the small spindle. Then, an impossible thought formed. She turned to the old woman. "You always stitched one soul at a time." "Yes. What if?" She looked toward the giant spindle. "It was never meant to." The old woman's silver eyes widened. Understanding dawned. "No." The girl smiled. "It isn't a prison." She stepped toward the great spindle. "It's a loom." The oldest tailor watched silently. He did not interfere. Neither did the others, because this choice had never belonged to them. The stitched girl placed the small spindle against the ancient one. The carved symbols matched perfectly, as though separated long ago. The moment they touched, every thread in the cavern glowed brilliant gold. The giant spindle slowed, then changed. Instead of pulling souls apart, it began weaving, not flesh, Not bodies. Connections. The glowing threads flowed outward into every waiting spirit. One ghost reached another, then another. Their grief intertwined, shared, no longer carried alone. The machine had never required suffering, only remembrance. It had been twisted by generations who misunderstood its purpose. The old woman laughed through tears. We've been weaving wrong. The waiting ghosts smiled. One by one, they dissolved into warm golden light. Not erased, released. Each left behind a single thread. Not of sorrow, but of love. The threads gathered around the stitched girl. Not pulling her apart, holding her together. Every silver stitch beneath her skin transformed into shimmering gold. The pain vanished. For the first time since waking, she felt whole. Not because every missing piece had returned. Because the empty places no longer needed hiding. The cavern trembled. The ancient spindle cracked. Its work complete. It gently crumbled into dust. The tailors lowered their shears. The oldest inclined his head toward the girl. You chose neither death, a pause, nor defiance. She smiled. I chose healing. The faceless figure gave the closest thing it could to a smile. So the first weaver returns. Outside, morning sunlight spilled across Ashmere. The air felt lighter, brighter. The villagers remembered every lie, every choice, every death. Aldrin walked into the village square alone. He removed the silver raven ring from his finger and placed it upon the old fountain. Then he confessed everything, not because he hoped for mercy, because truth deserved to exist. Whatever followed belonged to those he had wronged. Weeks later, the old cottage still stood at the edge of the enchanted forest. Only now, its door remained open. People came from distant kingdoms carrying broken hearts instead of broken bodies. The old woman no longer worked alone. Beside her sat the young weaver. She did not resurrect the dead. She stitched together the souls of the living, those torn apart by grief, war, loss, regret. Sometimes, when a soul had unfinished business, she gently spun a single golden thread, just enough to let goodbye be spoken. No more, no less. Above the doorway hung a simple wooden sign. Nothing broken is beyond mending. As evening settled over the forest, dozens of golden threads drifted among the trees like quiet stars. The old woman smiled. You've surpassed me. The young weaver looked at the glowing forest. No, she gently turned the spindle once more. I just remembered what it was made for. For more stories, like and subscribe.